become a double victim. Not only have they been raped, but then the chain of command makes their life hell on wheels. They are shunned, they are persecuted, they are driven insane by the things that are done to them. A young woman by the name of Suzanne Swift, who was, and you've probably heard of her because her mother refused to let her case be dropped. Suzanne was in Iraq. She was a 19-year-old military police person. Her sergeant raped her and said, if you tell anyone, and if you don't let me to continue to sexually assault you whenever I want to, you will be dead. I will kill you. And Suzanne did tell her mother what was going on. And her mother said, her mother, who is a Spitfire, Sarah Rich, some of you all probably met her at Veterans for Peace events throughout the country. Her mother, who is a counseling person, a counselor herself, said, well, Suzanne, I'm going to get on the phone, we're going to get you out of there. Suzanne said, Mom, if you try that, this guy will kill me. He will kill me. And so for the rest of her tour in Iraq, she was raped repeatedly. The sergeant, just to keep her intimidated, so she would not be squeaking anything about this to anyone, really went after her. Unit formations. She had to wear a clock around her neck because she was late. He would say, you're late, Swift, for a formation. Wear this clock around your neck for the rest of the day. All sorts of demeaning things that will keep a person down. And once they go into the depression that happens when you have been sexually assaulted, I mean, things that we would say, well, why in the world would she ever put up with that? I mean, and knowing Suzanne now, it's like, I can't believe that, because she is a big, strapping woman that could take on a lot of people, but yet she did not. She did not. And it was this whole psychological crisis that she went into, as well as anybody that's been sexually assaulted goes into. But in the military, it becomes compounded because you have this chain of command that's supposed to be protecting you, and you put your trust and your honor and your whole life is in their hands, and yet they are doing you in. The prosecution rates of allegations of rape in the military are laughable. Less than 8% of the cases that are brought forward are ever prosecuted. And that's in contrast to something like 35%, another low figure in civilian life. Only 35% of those that are brought in civilian life are ever prosecuted. But in the military, 8%. And then, when those 8% go to trial, and granted, I mean, everybody gets their day in court. So you present your evidence. If the evidence isn't strong enough, the alleged perpetrator goes free. But in those cases where the evidence was strong, I mean, there are cases of guys convicted of rape and they're confined to the post for 20 or 30 days. They're fined $100. It's not like this criminal act is thought to be a true criminal act where you're put on the National Register of Sex Offenders, which they're supposed to be. But the military leaves it to the individual offender to put himself on the national roster of sex offenders. The military doesn't do it themselves. We found that out when we questioned in Japan. It's just not women in the military that get raped. It's women that live around military bases. And particularly overseas and in Japan and Okinawa, there's been a long, horrible history of Marines, Army, and Air Force raping Okinawan women in particular, but also around bases in Japan. And the latest case was a year and a half ago, a young 14-year-old girl raped by a 38-year-old Air Force sergeant, married, kids. And to the credit of the Okinawans, I mean, this has been going on for so long now that they have a network. And when they hear of something like this, the network goes into action, and they can have 30,000 people on the streets the next day. And that's what they've been doing. And to the extent that they just closed down business as usual in Okinawa, the American ambassador had to fly down from Tokyo to Okinawa to give his apologies to the governor of Okinawa. The three-star general in charge of U.S. forces in Okinawa and Japan had to call a halt to military operations for days of what they call reflection. What's going on here? What's going on? Why does this continue to happen? Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice had to send a formal apologies from the United States government to the Prime Minister of Japan. Some of these things now are reflecting because the Okinawans are taking this so rightfully, angrily, their demonstrations are resulting in the removal of some U.S. forces from Okinawa. 18,000 U.S. forces, which is still a drop in the bucket in the number that we have in Okinawa, but 18,000 are going to be moved out of there with another 40,000 support people. So the people of Okinawa are happy that that's happening, but guess where they're going? To another small Pacific island, one that's a territory of the United States, Guam, where this movement of Marines will now increase the population of Guam by 25%. 25%. I was asked by a Japanese peace group to meet with them in Guam in July of this year, and to meet with activists of Guam, who are very concerned about the militarization of their island. I mean, already they have an Air Force base there, they've got a Navy base there, and now a major Marine base moving into it. They don't want it. They don't want it. And how do you tell the big United States of America? I mean, you're a territory, an unincorporated territory, where you can't even vote for the president. How do you tell the United States of America, we don't want you anymore. We don't want these military bases. We're not big enough to absorb what happens when we have all of these people that come in here. Well, that's one of the challenges that Guam's going through. And so the activists from Japan, in solidarity with the people of Guam, to go there to say, the U.S. needs to relook this. If you're going to remove forces from Japan, why not bring them back to the mainland of the U.S., where there's a much larger area that they can be absorbed in, and major bases that they have at Pendleton, Camp Pendleton in Southern California, and Camp Lejeune on the east coast of the United States. So the phenomenon of rape associated with military is a strong one, and the rape occurs in the military itself as well as outside the military, around U.S. military bases.
How do we change that?
And how do we change it? What do we do? Well, one of the things that I am very adamant about is that unless the chain of command is held responsible for rapes that occur within the units. I mean, military commanders, when I was in the military, oh God, you lived in fear of the higher in rank you went, and the more people that you supervised, that you managed, that you led. When any of them got in trouble for whatever it was, whether it was drunk driving, whether it was drug use, whether it was whatever it was, it reflected on the entire chain of command. And that's why, as a commander, you were relentless. You were relentless with your troops to say, this drinking and driving will not work. If you do that, not only are you going to get thrown in the clink in civilian life, but I'm going to, as a minimum, you're going to get an administrative, we're going to have an administrative hearing on it, or I may even bring you up on court-martial charges for dereliction of duty, because you can't drink and drive, you're jeopardizing yourself, and you are U.S. government property. And that's the old thing. You can always get everybody on that. You belong to the government, and you yourself are harming yourself, and therefore you're harming the government. I mean, but these are the way the military works. That's what you're told. You're the government's property, and if you take drugs, you're ruining government property. If you take alcohol, you're ruining government property. And I would say in the same way, if you rape somebody else, you're ruining government property. You're ruining the person that's the victim, and you're ruining yourself too. So it follows very closely into the way the military operates, that the commanders know that they are ultimately responsible for the actions of the people in their commands. And when you have a command atmosphere where it's known, hey, you can rape somebody and all you get is 30 days. If you get convicted, and the probabilities are really low, because that woman, you can scare the bejesus out of a raper and then tell her you're going to kill her if she even reports it. And if she dares report it, the chain of command's probably not gonna believe it. And even if they do, the